At the beginning of the film, showing a desert in Spain, here there was the most famous and powerful mafia boss, Victoria. Apparently, Victoria was now executing 3 hitmen from Australia because they dared to enter her territory. When it was her turn to execute the last hitman, suddenly the hitman fought back. He managed to escape and went to a bar in the middle of the desert. It was told that this hitman's name was Snag. He immediately ordered a drink from the bartender. There, Snag was seen very thirsty, and he immediately finished 1 big glass of his drink. Snag even ordered another glass because he was still thirsty. At the same time, the bartender got a call, and when he picked it up, it turned out to be Victoria, the mafia boss. Apparently, this bar belonged to Victoria, and she asked the bartender to finish off a man with the characteristics of white skin, blue eyes, and wearing a beach shirt. The bartender said that the person was here, at this bar, so that he would immediately finish him off. Soon after the call ended, this is what happened. Seeing Snag's prowess and bravery, a woman was amazed to see his action. Even when Snag was cornered and bounced in front of him, the woman instead gave him a knife and encouraged him. However, Snag, who was outnumbered, was helpless. Not long after, the bartender came with a gun and was about to finish off Snag. But suddenly, the woman fired her gun upwards and asked the bartender and everyone there to stay away from Snag. Everyone there obeyed the woman because it turned out that she was Victoria's daughter. After that, she took Snag away from there using her car. On the way, the woman said that her name was Valentina and she was very interested in Snag's courage and greatness. Hearing this, Snag said that he was also attracted to Valentina's greatness and beauty. It seemed like they fell in love. The next following days, Snag and Valentina were officially dating. Snag even tattooed Valentina's name on his finger as proof that he truly loved her. Seeing this, Valentina just smiled and they kissed. The next day, Valentina and Snag were making out. Here, Valentina said that if she wanted to introduce Snag to her mother, Victoria, the mafia boss, to ask for her blessing. Valentina wanted their relationship to be more serious towards marriage. Snag then answered that he was Victoria's fugitive because he had killed someone in her area, but he is ready to do anything for Valentina, even though his life is at stake. Hearing these sweet words, Valentina became so happy, and they immediately continued their romance, making love. The next day, Valentina was seen bringing Snag to talk with her mother, Victoria. Snag immediately apologizes if he ever killed someone in Victoria's area. Snag really hopes that Victoria would understand this because he's just doing his job. Then, Snag begged Victoria to give him her blessing because he really loves Valentina and wants to marry her. Victoria said that in fact, she didn't like her daughter having a partner who was a hitman because it would really endanger her daughter's life. But Victoria didn't want to see her daughter's heart broken either, so she gave them her blessing as long as Snag had to serve her for the rest of his life. Of course, Snag agreed, so started for now, they made peace. The next day, Snag started serving Victoria by beating up Victoria's business rival and then taking all his money away. Even though he was fighting alone, Snag managed to take Victoria's business rival hostage and then asked his men to hand over all the money. After that, Snag rushed to run away and Valentina was waiting outside. On the way, Snag and Valentina were seen very happy because they managed to take all the money from the mafia boss, who was Victoria's business rival. However, suddenly, they were attacked. It turned out that it was an attack from the mafia boss's men, who were still chasing them. Snag was seen unconscious because he was injured, and Valentina immediately took him to hide in the bushes. However, the mafia boss's men managed to find them, so Valentina had to fight them with her great action. Thank God, Valentina managed to finish them all, even though she was fighting alone. A few days later, it was shown Victoria, who brought Valentina and Snag to teach them how to torture people who dared to betray her. Victoria tortured the man very cruelly, and once she was satisfied, she left him in the middle of the desert. 2 weeks later, Snag continued to work for Victoria, finishing off her business rivals, then took their money. After doing his job, Snag went to Victoria's car, which had been waiting for him all this time. Snag immediately gave all the money he had stolen to Victoria, even though he was injured. Suddenly, Victoria brought a gun and said that in fact she didn't agree if Valentina, her daughter, must marry Snag. Victoria asked Snag to go as far as possible if he didn't want to be killed. Hearing this, Snag was annoyed and didn't want to accept it, because they promised each other before, so Snag wondered what does his devotion mean all this time. Victoria just said that it's all just to pretend because she didn't want to make her daughter hurt. Victoria gave Snag 1 day, and after that, she asked Snag to go as far as possible without Valentina knowing. There was no goodbye because it would only hurt Valentina's heart. If Snag didn't obey Victoria's words, then Snag wouldn't survive. The next day, Snag was actually determined to come to Valentina and then said everything. Here, he planned to take Valentina away, and he promised to kill anyone who dared to stop him. Meanwhile, Valentina agreed with Snag's decision because they loved each other. However, Valentina said that it would be better for them to get married first in the middle of the desert before leaving this country. Because they didn't have much time, Snag finally agreed to Valentina's request, and they would hold a wedding that same day. A few hours later, Snag and a priest were waiting for Valentina's presence in the middle of the desert. They were ready to get married, and now they waited for Valentina to arrive. Meanwhile, Valentina looked like she had just finished wearing her wedding dress, but unfortunately, Victoria caught her. Here, Valentina begged her mother to let her get married with Snag because she really loved him. However, Victoria still didn't accept it, so Valentina immediately ran away. On the other hand, Victoria already sent 4 of her men to thwart the wedding, so they immediately shot Snag and the priest. Luckily, Snag managed to survive, but the priest had to die. At the same time, Valentina ran with all her might into the middle of the desert to hug Snag, but 4 of Victoria's men continued to fire their guns and Valentina had to become a victim. Seeing this, Snag could only cry uncontrollably because he didn't expect that the woman he loved so much would end up like this. Before he left, Snag kissed Valentina's forehead, then he ran away from there. 4 years later, showing Snag, who now lives in isolation on the beach. Until now, Snag still couldn't forget Valentina, who was always in his heart. At this time, Snag had also decided to retire from being an assassin and chose to live a normal life like other people. Not long after, Snag went to a cafe to drink some coffee. It turned out that the owner of the cafe was Snag's best friend, Javi, and his older sister, Anna. They seemed to be very close because all this time, Javi and Anna were only Snag's friends. The next day, when Snag just woke up from his sleep, there was an armed man outside of the house, intending to enter Snag's house. Then, after a long duel, Snag managed to lock the man in, but the 2 of them actually laughed at each other, because it turned out that the man was Snag's friend in the past, Marco, and he was a hitman too. The 2 of them continued chatting while looking at the view of the beach. Here, Marco said that the purpose of his visit was to tell Snag that Valentina, Snag's girlfriend, was still alive. All this time, Valentina was hidden by his mother, so Snag also had to be careful because Victoria was still targeting him. Hearing this, Snag didn't believe it because he was so sure that Valentina had died in his arms. Marco then gave him a photo of Valentina that he managed to get secretly. Marco also knew where Valentina is now, but Victoria and her subordinates guarded her very closely. When Snag heard all this, he couldn't hold back his tears and promised that whatever the risk, he would take Valentina back with him. Marco couldn't bear to see his best friend, so he finally wanted to help Snag. However, they needed 2 more people and complete weapons to fight Victoria. The scene shifts to the cafe owner, Snag's friends Javi and Anna. The 2 of them were seen relaxing while doing their daily bookkeeping. Not long after, Javi was contacted by Snag, asking him and Anna to come to his house immediately. Apparently, Snag intended to ask for help from Javi and Anna to make Valentina his mine again and fought the tight guard of Victoria and her men. As a good friend, of course, Javi didn't mind, and he immediately invited Anna to go to Snag's house. Shortly, they arrived at the meeting point, and Snag immediately took Marco into Javi's car, because today he would start his mission. On the way, Snag explained everything, saying that they would go to Victoria's headquarters to take Valentina. Marco would guide their way, because only he knew about Victoria's headquarters now. But before that, they had to stop first at a mini gas station belonging to Snag's friend. There, they would take the weapons. It turned out that after retiring from being an assassin, Snag entrusted all his weapons to his best friend, the owner of the gas station. When he got there, Snag immediately went inside, and his friend didn't think that all this time, Snag was still alive. Snag's friend told him that Victoria was still hunting him down. She even hired the best hitman to finish off Snag. Fortunately, Snag hid in a safe place, so it was difficult for anyone to find out. After that, Snag asked for his weapons because now he was going to attack Victoria and her henchmen in order to bring Valentina back. Snag's best friend immediately took Snag to the weapons room, and fortunately, Snag's friend took good care of all of the weapons so they could still be used properly. Then Snag quickly returned to the car, but there he saw Anna and Javi had been held at gunpoint by two robbers. The robbers asked Snag and his friends to hand over all their property, but suddenly there was an attack. It turned out that it was an attack from a female hitman ordered by Victoria to hunt Snag, until the gunfight broke out. In the middle of the battle, Snag's friend asked Snag and his group to leave immediately, while he would face the assassin. Finally, Snag and his group managed to leave, and Snag's friend managed to shoot the female assassin. However, she got up again because her whole body was fully wearing a bulletproof vest. Then she continued to chase Snag because her main target was Snag, not other people. A few minutes after that, Snag and the group were still on their way. Here, Javi asked Snag to rest for a while at his grandfather's house, which was not far from the area. At first, Snag refused because it was possible that the female assassin was still chasing him. But Javi assured him that his grandfather's house was in a hidden place so that it would be impossible for anyone to find them. In the end, Snag wanted to obey Javi's words. When they all got there, Javi asked Marco and his older sister, Anan, to turn on the lighting generator in the next room, while he and Snag would wait in the living room. Javi suggested that they should spend the night here and continue their journey tomorrow morning because it was getting late. In the generator room, Marco and Anna kept trying to turn on the machine, but it didn't work because it hadn't been used for a long time. Anna then asked why Snag would do all this just for the sake of a woman. Marco then answered that Valentina wasn't an ordinary woman for Snag because she had saved Snag's life several times. They were also a perfect couple, like Romeo and Juliet, because they completed each other. Not long after, Marco heard the sound of a vehicle coming, and when he checked it, it was the female assassin who had brought her troops along. At the same time, Snag also realized her arrival, and he was surprised why she could know his current location, even though this place was so hidden. So, like it or not, Snag had to fight the assassin and her henchmen until a great battle broke out. In the middle of the fight, Marco dueled with the female assassin. But when Marco was about to finish her off, suddenly he was shot. It turned out that all this time, Anna had been Victoria's spy who was assigned to monitor Snag. Besides, Snag himself was still fighting with the henchmen until he succeeded in finishing them all. Unfortunately, Javi was shot in the stomach and he had to die. Not long after, Anna came and gave the phone to Snag. It turned out that the caller was Victoria, who said goodbye to Snag. Victoria praised Snag's greatness because he was so difficult to kill. Victoria also said that Snag and Valentina would never be united, even though Valentina has Snag's child. Victoria would never tell her grandchild who the father is because she really didn't like Snag. Hearing this, Snag could only cry because he didn't know that he had become a father, so he felt like a failure because he was not able to win Valentina back. After the call was hung up, Anna apologized because she did all this to pay off her family's debt to Victoria. The end.